Hola, bienvenidos. Nos encontramos aquí en un Encuentro del Futuro en el marco del Congreso del Futuro. Mi nombre es Nadia Politis y vamos a iniciar un increíble panel con espectaculares entrevistados. Así que vamos a empezar con la invitación para que se sumen a través de nuestras redes sociales y por supuesto hacer la introducción correspondiente. Saludamos a Bart Intema. Bart Intema es vicepresidente senior del Food and Agricultural Development of the Rabobank International, también es coautor del libro The Future of Farming y es cofundador del Global Farmers Masterclass. Hello, nice to meet you.
Hi.
También tenemos aquí a mi otro lado, tenemos a Renzo Guinto de Filipinas. Hola Renzo, ¿cómo estás?
Muy bien.
Renzo, para que ustedes sepan, él es médico, candidato a doctor en salud pública por la Universidad de Harvard y sus intereses en salud pública son muchos y por decir de alguna forma van desde la atención sanitaria universal, la educación médica y la salud de los migrantes, hasta la diplomacia mundial en salud, las enfermedades no transmisibles, el cambio climático y la política energética. Bastante amplio el campo y muy interesante por lo demás. Y también tenemos acá nuestra representación chilena con el profesor Ricardo Huawi. Profesor, un gusto estar aquí con usted.
Muy bien.
El doctor Ricardo es Premio Nacional de Ciencias Aplicadas Tecnológicas del año 2012, es doctor en Bioquímica Nutricional y forma parte del cuerpo académico del Instituto de Nutrición y Tecnología de Alimentos de la Universidad de Chile, conocido como INTA. Y por supuesto, acá también tenemos nuestra representación femenina que no nos podía faltar, así que le damos la bienvenida también a Paola Casanelo. Hola Paola, ¿cómo estás?
Hola, muy bien, gracias.
Paola es doctora en Ciencias Biológicas de la Universidad Católica de Chile y por supuesto se va a unir a este interesante panel para conversar con nosotros. Así que vamos a empezar y los invitamos a ustedes también para que se unan a esta conversación. Y empecemos. The first question to start our panel today. I want to make an invitation for you. An invitation to talk about four main topics about health. First of all, speak about agriculture, nutrition, infections, and finally, public health. This is the main invitation. So I want to start to make the first question to talk about, in your opinion, what are the main challenges facing the food industry in a scenario that estimates the world population of 9 billion people by 2050? It's a huge question. Who wants to start?
I can start. It's indeed a huge challenge, but on the other hand, I think we can also say it's an extremely nice opportunity, because what we know is that we expect 9 billion people by 2050, and maybe it will be 11 billion people in 2100. So basically that means that we at least have to double the food production. So we have to double the amount of food we produce now, and we also have to make sure that everybody on this globe has access to nutritious food every day. So I think producing the food will maybe not be the biggest challenge. I think the biggest challenge is to make sure that everybody has access to good nutritious food every day.
And what about Chile?
Do you want to start? Yeah,
Well,
I think
Chile has had a very rapid nutrition and economic transition in terms of having greater access to food. And in fact, obviously, healthy foods are obviously an issue because food calories are abundant now and are actually very cheap. And the tendency is for people to overconsume energy. Unfortunately, we have no good regulation that allows to match how much we need to spend for how much we eat. Ideally, you want to spend and then eat to compensate what you've spent. We end up eating and then trying to spend what we've eaten, and in fact, that creates always a surplus because we're not very honest in calculating how much we've eaten. We underestimate that, and we overestimate how much exercise and how much expenditure we've done. So, in a way, we are a little bit in a trap that facilitates overconsumption and under-exercising.
And what about Bart? Bart, you represent Philippines,
Sí,
so it's
yes.
your first time in Chile. Tell us, what about these main challenges?
Right.
Maybe if you can compare with our country also.
Wonderful. So as you've mentioned, I come from the Philippines, which is at the heart of the climate crisis that we're facing right now. In fact, we used to have like 20 typhoons per year, but now we're seeing an increase in the frequency, but also in the severity of these typhoons. And we've seen farmlands being destroyed by these natural disasters, flooding and typhoons. And so climate change poses a grave threat to agriculture, as it poses a huge threat to human health. And so it's a major challenge. Now we're looking at ways on how to support farmers to make sure that they have livelihood, that they can put food on every Filipino's table, but also to ensure that the Filipino population achieves good nutrition in an era of climate change.
And what about Paola, in your opinion? What is the main challenge?
Well, I think one of the main challenges is what Dr. Wawi has put on the table this afternoon regarding nutrition, availability of nutrients for the population. As I mentioned in my talk, we're interested in perinatal conditions, let's say mother and the baby, just the growing baby. So how nutrients are available for the growing of equilibrated diet for the mom to have healthy babies is one of the main subjects we have. And since in our country mainly, it's so cheap to access to high-fat food, high-sugar food, so this is a challenge for women in gestation in our country mainly, because we have so high rates of obesity in our country. For women in gestational period, fertile period, we have around 60% of our women are overweight or obese. So this is a great challenge for us.
And this is happening in most developing countries.
Yeah.
In a way, access to calories is readily available and is now accessible.
And Professor, in your opinion, is nutrition the same as food?
No, definitely
Really
the
not.
quality of the food defines nutrition. But people normally look at food as providing enough energy. And in fact, up to recently, the world map of hunger was not based on the quality of the food, but only on energy. And that's an oversimplification that invites to have extra cereals and extra sugar, when in fact those are now presently in excess, because what we're lacking is enough physical activity. We now have mechanized labor, we now have transport that is mechanized, we have higher fat diets. Fats now are, vegetable fats are very, very available. So we have a surplus of energy in and a deficit in energy out. And as humans, we evolved trying to save spending energy. We try to have machines do the work for us.
And
we have to get back and do work ourselves.
And Bar, in your opinion, we can say that we eat, for example.
You are what you eat.
You are what you
Oh,
eat.
you are what you eat.
Right.
Yeah, in this modern world with
Yeah.
these kind of problems.
Yeah, and I think that can work both ways. So that can be positive, and it can also be negative. So, and as you explain it, I think that's the negative side. So maybe if we just put it the other way around, is it then the issue that we made food too cheap, especially in the developed regions? So you were suggesting to put some regulation in place, how much you're allowed to eat. I don't think that will be the solution. So is it that maybe we made food just too cheap, or is it that we have to re-educate our people, our children, what is good for them and what kind of food they should
But
eat,
it's,
etc.
yeah, when you said it very correctly, we make food too cheap because we're subsidizing. We are actually have legal frameworks that belong 40 years ago when there was hunger. So those same frameworks now in the face of obesity are fueling the obesity. So we need to adjust our legislation and our support system to what would be a healthier diet in terms of balancing energy in, energy out.
And Renzo, in your opinion, it's any relationship between food, maybe some kind of disease?
So, for instance, as we have already discussed, food and obesity is one link. The overconsumption of food. But also, we should also not forget that there are people who do not get to eat 3 times a day, and so there's also global undernutrition. And actually, for example, I remember adding my advocacy, which is climate change and addressing climate change. The Lancet, which is a World Medical Journal, in 2015 said that if we don't address climate change, we will see a reversal of 50 years of gains in global health, including gains in global nutrition. So, it's a scary future if we're going back to our situation 50 years ago when people are hungry and undernourished.
But I have an invitation for you. If you can say in one word, okay, maybe 2, the main challenges of these nutritional problems and agricultural problems, what will be the main word, for example? Paola?
From the point of view of nutrition, I think for our country, the major problem is obesity, the imbalance between what we eat and what we spend. Yeah, and regarding your previous question, I think we're not only what we eat, we are what we eat, but we are what our grandmother and our mother ate. So this is an effect that's going to last generations. I think obesity, we're not going to get rid of obesity in a few generations more if we don't do some challenging changes in the way we eat.
Bart?
I think I cannot frame it in one word, so I need 2. I think
No, it's okay.
on the one hand, it's availability, access to food for the people who do not have access to nutritious food 3 times a day, like you say. And I think for the more developed countries where we see obesity as an issue, I guess it's knowledge. So I think it's really about that people have to learn again what is good for you to eat and what not, and exercise, etc., to have a healthy diet and to be healthy, and also to avoid, in the end, then the high medical cost.
Friends?
You would expect that I'll say climate change, but
I expect that.
I want to say another term, which is
second word,
a
maybe.
second word, which is equity. And echoing what you just said, some people get more and some people get less. I'm reminded by what Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi once said. There's enough for people's needs, but definitely not sufficient for everyone's greed. And so we need to address equity issues, the inequalities in access to food, access to quality kind of food, between people, between countries, even within countries. But that will require a lot of work, not just within the medical community or the nutrition community, but intersectoral action with agriculture, with trade, with
and
governance.
also policies.
Correct.
Professor?
I think the key aspect is what we put on our plate. And basically, that is what needs to change. If we put on our plate only cereals and oils, it's going to be very difficult to have energy balance. So basically, we need more going back to the roots in terms of raw, natural foods. Came back to the legumes. Legumes play a very important way in terms of climate change. If we're able to feed protein directly to humans in terms of beans, in terms of chickpeas, in terms of the whole variety of legumes we have, we will be saving this that we feed animals, and then we get the protein from the animals. And in fact, the pricing in somehow is a way that you can try to make it more accessible or less accessible. And the production and the way governments can plan where to put their resources. And what a very good example is Brazil. Brazil has said children in school need to eat food that comes from that same community produced by the farmers. That in itself changes the whole thing, because there you can have local production, you can have fresh fruits and vegetables, you can have legumes. So I think we need to go back to basics in terms of designing not necessarily the food for the world, but for every community. Hopefully local foods will be a much better effort than trying to take rice from the Orient to go elsewhere and pay all the transport. And of course, the other point is that we need to go back to the origins in terms of meat. If you are subsidizing meat, by having corn subsidies like in the US.
And I think
you
that is
have
a
a
very
lot of meat for
important
very
second
cheap-
part
right, yeah.
to take in the second part of our conversation. So let's start and hagamos una breve pausa en este programa de Encuentros del Futuro en el marco del Congreso del Futuro, por supuesto. Le hacemos la invitación y nos encontramos aquí en el segundo bloque. Volvemos acá a Encuentros del Futuro, una instancia de conversación, de reflexión en el marco del Congreso del Futuro, y estamos acá con nuestro panel de invitados y para iniciar una conversación que es bastante interesante en Chile y de la cual podemos entregar muchos detalles, que es la salud pública. Y vamos a partir con el doctor Ricardo Huawi, specifically speaking about public health.
Okay, so
And
basically,
in the
yeah.
first part, you tell us a main point really interesting.
Well, we're in a nutrition transition. Most
Yeah.
countries in the world are moving from the undernutrition that experienced in the past, especially as countries are able to have better economic productivity, they have increased access to foods. Now, the foods that were very precious and very limited availability in early times were mainly fats and sugars.
And what about the policies?
Well, the food has now become not only a need, a basic human need, but also it's a policy and politics. Say, the example of Brazil, the president of Brazil was elected on a platform that says, I'm going to assure that every person in Brazil has 3 meals a day. So, and that's very important because it means that it's driving politics and policies, and in a way, fulfilling basic human needs.
And what about, Renzo, what do we need? Maybe a local effort, maybe global efforts? What is the main?
Great question, especially today that we often talk about global health,
Yeah.
which is, the health of one country cannot be isolated anymore from the health of neighbors, even, with the health of Filipinos, which is like 13,000 miles away across the Pacific. And I'm a student of public health now, so I'm really impressed by the public health system of Chile. In fact, I was telling my Filipino colleagues that we should be going to Chile to learn about, the good things that they're doing. Food labeling, for example. When I went to the supermercado,
Yeah.
it says to me, alto. So you have to stop first and think about, am I going to buy this product?
You stop and think?
Yes, a bit. But also, going back to the broader question of public health, in my presentation a while ago, I said that the future of public health is planetary health. And you really, in the 21st century, you cannot separate the health of humanity from the health of the planet that sustains us. So I think now we're entering that era wherein, we're veering away from that anthropocentric view, that it's just about us. Now we're looking at systems, we're looking at the surroundings, we're looking at how we design our cities. In fact, urban planning used to be a field of
Yeah.
public health because, how we design our cities basically dictate how healthy we'll be.
And Bart, what tell us the main research about this kind of problems in your field, for example?
I think what is very interesting in this field is that especially if you look at the urbanization, that maybe within a couple of decades, 60, 70, 80% of all the people around the world will live in cities instead of also living in the rural areas. And I think that will have a major impact also on public health systems, etc., and how we have to deal with that.
And people, the empowerment of people, Paola, and especially you talk about mothers and pregnancy.
Well, I think the role of women in public health is extremely important.
Yeah.
We have seen it in our countries, how women, for example, relating to breastfeeding or not of the babies, we've had these very strong campaigns of women going out in the street with the babies, and because of some social circumstances in which mothers went to breastfeed in a restaurant and they were asked to go out because they cannot breastfeed in public. So I think this role of women showing how breastfeeding is so important. We now have 6 months of maternal leave for women to stay home with their babies and breastfeed them, so exclusively, as the WHO suggests that women breastfeed for 6 months. So I think the role of women in the different public health decisions regarding nutrition and the effects in the long term for the babies and for themselves is very, very important, because women, this is very simple to look at. You look at a family. If the mom is fat, you will see most of the members in the family are fat, which is related to how she cooks, the customs they have as a family. Do they eat
What things she buys?
Yeah,
for
what
example,
things
at
she
the supermarket.
buys and what things she supports her babies to eat from when they're little. A lot of sugar and a lot of cookies as part of their feeding.
And unlike keywords, reduce and increase.
Increase, yeah.
Increase. What reduce and what increase?
What reduce and what increase?
Regarding to diet, you mean?
Yeah.
I think it's just reduce the amount of calories you take, or at least balance it in what you need.
Paula?
We need to increase. In Chile particularly, we've been speaking at lunch with some people. It's very important that we increase fatty acids, polyunsaturated fatty acids, which have been shown to be very important for the development of the brain and the retina and for the immunological response. And here in Chile, we have a huge coast, a lot of fish, but our population eats very low amounts of fish. So this is one thing we need to increase. And I think we need to low in our population is sugar in all the forms possible.
Sugar,
Sugar
also
and fat are too
salt?
high.
Salt, maybe?
Sugar, fat, and salt, we have an appetite for those because we evolved in an environment that was limited. So we now overconsume them, and we're paying a price. Now, reduction in the amount in the foods is probably the best way, because and also teach people not to add extra salt when the food already has the salt. Obviously, that takes time, because it takes time over a generation. In fact, we should be making a special effort on the food we give children, because we're setting up the dietary habits, the taste of salt and sugar that we become established early on. And of course, that means that we need to monitor the content, especially of processed foods. If you're eating only natural foods, it's very difficult to get high sugar or high fat. So basically, sugar, fat, and starches need to be controlled. And of course, exercise needs to be increased. This is energy in, energy out. And I think that's where we obviously have too much sedentary time and too limited active time. I think that this is more, that the balancing the energy balance equation is low on the expenditure side more than on the excess eating.
I've already run out of nutrients, so I will be more political this time. Increase public awareness about healthy food, but also decrease advertising by unhealthy, big food industries, and also decrease lobbying.
Like us in Chile.
Like we're putting the labels in a way people understand, not the way that industry likes to have them.
Yeah, our government try to do that.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's doing it.
Yeah, and you think that will be positive, in a positive way to do that?
Which to put labels.
Yeah.
Yes. So very few countries in the world do that. The Philippines does not have that kind of like a stop-go system yet. And as I was saying a while ago, that's something that we might copy from Chile. I mean, global health is about learning from each other's experience and trying to avoid other countries' failures. In fact, we often talk about successes in public health, how to improve health, but we seldom talk about failures and how we can learn from them so we can do it better next time.
Okay, so I think that we agree, disagree. We have to take the experience and maybe improve our public policies, and maybe try to do another. I think that it's a perfect opportunity maybe to give a message to the next generation, because this is the main theme of our Congress. Who wants to send a message to the next generations about maybe agriculture, maybe food, and maybe health policies? Who wants to take the turn? I think that you, Professor.
I think the main message is that we need to be mindful that eating is a basic human need, but at the same time, it's a major determinant of health.
Right.
So we need to eat right, eat balanced. It's all of this is easier said than done, but also match energy in and energy out, which means if we overeat, we need to spend more time doing exercise. And of course, that is reflected in body weight. So keep a healthy weight and also keep a healthy waist. In terms of the danger to health, weight is less relevant than waste. And that is very simple. And if you're finding that you're having to give extra room, it's time that you start to become more active.
And also it's a reality.
Right, yes.
We want to, at the end of the program, with a surprise, because we want to surprise you with our guest from Philippines.
See?
So you have a surprise for us.
Yes, so as I mentioned in my talk a while ago, the Philippines, like Chile, is also used to be a Spanish colony also. But we never learned Spanish, but we had several Spanish words incorporated in our language. So I understand a bit, but I want to take this opportunity to read a short poem from Pablo Neruda
Please,
that
please.
I delivered or recited
Of
a
course,
while ago.
in Spanish.
Sí. Because Chile and the Philippines are connected by this big Pacific Ocean, you know, which is a wealth of health and natural resources. So I'll read it. El Océano Pacífico se salía del mapa. No había dónde ponerlo. Era tan grande, desordenado y azul que no cabía en ninguna parte. Por eso lo dejaron frente a mi ventana. So, you know, looking at the window, and
Wow.
That means that before you leave Chile,
Right.
you have to go to Pablo Neruda's house
Sí.
in the coast, which is an hour and a half away, and you will find why he wrote that.
Wonderful.
And with this beautiful poem, we have to leave and we have to end the conversation. Le hacemos la invitación a ustedes de todas formas a seguir el Congreso del Futuro, a seguir nuestras redes sociales, a invitar a la comunidad a que participe, a que se integre, a que asista, y con esto cerramos este ciclo de Encuentros del Futuro, por supuesto en el Congreso del Futuro. Será en otra oportunidad.